Ireland's Health Clinic on Today. Sponsored by Boots, looking after your health.
Now becoming a new parent is a very exciting time, but even with the most positive mums and dads, it can be really rattling by things like colic and constipation, those early weeks especially.
Certainly we know all about it. Well, it's kind of a distant memory at the moment. But you know what? There are tips and simple solutions for all of that. And we are delighted to have Boots Pharmacist Heather Feeney with us here to guide us through this again. Heather, you're very, very welcome to the show. I suppose, you know, in all fairness, you have 9 months to plan. You should get a plan in place by the time baby comes.
Absolutely. It's a really exciting time, but so nerve-wracking. But as we always say, it takes a village, and the village is there. So it's just about knowing where the supports are, knowing who you need to contact, and kind of preempting what's going to come with a newborn, and then you're well prepared for it.
Yeah, you're right, actually. And I suppose having kind of supplies and different things in the house, things you will need, like thermometers and all that, and we'll talk about that in a second. I suppose we'll talk about it now because the most important thing is to actually have a thermometer when it comes to fever. And fever, especially in a young baby.
Yeah, so fever is something that is like a high temperature, essentially. So a normal temperature for a baby would be between 36 to 36.8 degrees, and then we'd consider a temperature of 38 degrees or more to be high. So what we would say is have a digital thermometer bought, if that's your preference. We generally say take the temperature under the armpit. And
the old-fashioned way as well. It's no harm to know some of those things as well.
Or in the ear as well, Helen.
You can take it in the ear, or else there's a lot of kind of new fancy little non-contact
non-contact.
Yeah.
How long can a fever last for, Heather?
So it depends on what's causing the fever. So I'd say fever for about 3 days would be relatively normal, and you can treat it yourself at home as long as it doesn't go far beyond 38 degrees. But past 3 days, you'd kind of want to look into then what it's causing.
When should you worry when you talk about, say, 39 creeping up to 40? Should you immediately go to a doctor then with the child?
I would at that point, definitely. Get in contact with your healthcare practitioner or make an appointment with the doctor.
But say if your child has a fever, there are things you can do at home as well.
Totally. So there's loads of your own kind of tips that you can do. So having a cool bath, giving some cool liquids, or also there's paracetamol and ibuprofen that you can talk to your pharmacist about in terms of dosing, but they will bring the temperature down also.
That's what we would know, I suppose, as Calpol and Nurofen, some of the brands that we would be very familiar with. Now, Calpol is paracetamol, and that can be given to younger babies, is that right?
That can be given from 2 months, and then Nurofen, which is the ibuprofen, that can be given from 3 months onwards. And actually, if it's a temperature that you want to have, I suppose, more medicine to give them over the time period, Calpol is given 4 times a day, which is every 6 hours, and Nurofen is 3 times a day, which is every 8 hours. So if you want to stagger the doses with Calpol, if you were going alone, if you had 1 o'clock, then it's 6 hours till 7. So you can stagger Nurofen in there also as well, actually.
And you can take both of them at the same time as well, can't you?
And if you stagger the dosing, then you have kind of 2 more.
What do you think yourself, though? Because I know different children react differently to different things. Some people find that Nurofen brings down a temp quicker, but is Nurofen more as an anti-inflammatory rather than a pain reliever?
Yeah, so Nurofen is an anti-inflammatory. So there's little kind of inflammatory bodies within us. That's what kind of creates like the fever and the warmness around a cut or anything like that. So that's an anti-inflammatory, whereas the Calpol is more of an antipyretic, which means it brings down a fever itself.
Yeah, you can use suppositories as well, and they work very fast, don't they?
They do, yeah. So they're kind of, you know, your final tier before you're going to the doctor. The suppositories work very, very quickly.
Yeah, and it's good to have some of them at home as well.
Totally, yes. Just being stocked up and having everything in the house for when you need it.
I think they're fine until they get a certain age, though.
Well, I suppose they know what's happening, and they know then how to push them out as well.
We
don't want to get too.
We don't want to get too.
But listen, it's important for parents to know that as well. But they work really, really fast.
Yeah, and there's different solutions for on the go. So maybe a suppository is great to have in the house, but actually the liquids might be better if you're going into town.
What about colic?
Yeah, colic. So
I can see lots of parents at home going, "Oh my God, don't talk about colic."
Is colic something specific, or is it an umbrella term?
So it's not an umbrella term, but the cause of colic is unknown. So colic is periods of persistent crying. So they say it's a period of 3 hours per day or more, but some people will say anecdotally it's a lot more than 3 hours over a period of time.
But we don't know. Everyone says colic is kind of wind, but we actually don't know what it is, do we?
We don't know definitively.
When you get the wind up, if the wind comes up and the child stops crying, you say, yes, it was
what
wind.
It is.
But like as you said there, if the child's crying for 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 hours, it's colic.
Yeah, it's the persistent crying that's colic, but it is really often associated with digestive symptoms. So that's why you'll see a lot of the advice around colic would be things like feeding your baby sitting upright, and when you're feeding your baby to hold, if it's bottle fed, to hold the teat in a way that it's full of milk so they're not ingesting as much air.
So they're taking the air. And there are bottles now as well that you can put a thing into them as well, if I remember correctly, that the air doesn't go into the bottle.
Oh yeah, there's the ones with the different bottoms.
Oh, all sorts of teats and valves and bottles and stuff. So yeah, there's a huge amount out there for it.
Kids do grow out of it though at around maybe 3 months. Is that the norm? normal time?
It can go on till 6 months.
Really?
So generally it's 3 or 4, but it can go as long as 6 months.
It's important to say to people watching as well who are going through this, it will eventually
pass. It's hard
stop.
at the time,
It is
though.
very, very hard.
You never think it's going to be over at the time.
Oh, totally. When we have parents coming in, they can be quite distressed about it because their baby is inconsolable, but, you know, it's important that you don't take it personally. It's totally normal.
Heather, a few years ago, I was never as happy in my life to see poo.
Oh, really?
The child was constipated for around 3 days and poo came at the end. And you know what? I went down on my bended knees praying. It was the best thing I've ever seen in my life. Because it can be tough when the children are constipated.
Totally, and it makes them very irritable as well and very upset themselves, which no one likes to see. So constipation is extremely common. It's probably less common in breastfed infants because breast milk itself is kind of a mild laxative. But in bottle-fed infants, and then when you're going through those transitionary periods towards solids and whatnot, extremely common indeed.
Okay.
What
But
do
their
you
systems
do?
are only getting used to it as well. So
Exactly, yeah. So it's important just to kind of monitor your baby. So because babies are fed differently, like between breastfeeding and formula feeding, there's no kind of set frequency for when your baby should be going to the toilet, but it's actually looking at the consistency of the stool and the behaviour of the baby when they're passing that stool. So if a baby is, you know, in pain, if you can see they've got some abdominal discomfort, a bit of wind, that's in excess of what you would imagine is normal. If the baby's uncomfortable, then
you know your own baby anyway.
You do, of course.
And what the baby's going through.
But do you have to get medication at some point, though, or you
At
have
some
to bring a
stage,
child to the doctor if it's persistent over a period of days?
Absolutely. So in terms of what you can do in the short term, if there's just a bout of constipation, it's looking at fluid intake and it's looking at any dietary changes you've had. But you can go into your pharmacist. There are some over-the-counter remedies. So there's a stool softening liquid that can be given, and then in more severe cases, there's enemas and there's suppositories as well.
Okay.
And finally, nappy rash.
Yes.
Do they
Nappy
all
rash.
get it?
Yeah, kind
I
of.
don't remember getting that. Well, not me, but the young fella.
Not recently.
Apparently, a lot of kids with teething will get a bit of nappy when they getting teeth. They get a bit of it.
Yeah, so like the way to prevent nappy rash is to have a clean and dry environment, and that's kind of an environment that's not that easy to keep clean and dry all the time, so it is really common on the back of that.
Can I ask you a question? You've brought in,
Of course.
is that Candicin? Is that a talc? I mean, we'd say talc years ago, talcum powder, but it's a non-talc powder, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So it's used in the prevention of nappy rash and also in the treatment of it. So it just keeps it dry, it relieves any itch if there's any of that associated with the baby's nappy rash. But yeah, completely normal, and a lot that can be done for it in terms of hygiene.
I think once parents hear that it's normal, it's okay.
Yeah.
Even with colic and stuff like that, eventually it will go away.
It will.
We didn't even chat about teething there as well. There's loads of things there as well.
Oh, loads of things with teething. It's a really distressing time for a baby, but so much support you can get from your
Poor babies, they go through a lot, don't they, Heather?
Okay, yeah.
Thank God they forget all about it. That's all.
Thanks be to God they're growing up fast. Out the door and go to work.
Heather, thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Heather.
Thanks
Of
very
course,
much,
go
guys.
to your pharmacist, have a good chat with your pharmacist. But if there are any concerns with fevers or anything else, do go and consult your GP.
Ireland's Health Clinic on Today. Sponsored by Boots. Looking after your health.